Morning, everybody. It is Wednesday. It is 10 o'clock, and it's time for 10 with Tim. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being a part of my time in the Word every day, whether you're with me live now or joining me later. God bless you. We are in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 20, verses 17 to 34. It is often said, and I've already said it as we've been reading through Matthew, that the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are in many, many ways basically passion stories, passion narratives, the story of the crucifixion with just extended introductions. They really, everything is about the story of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. And everything before that is in many ways introduction to the story of the passion. And the Gospel of Matthew, I think, falls into that very description. What you have here in chapter 20, verse 17, is the third pronouncement of Jesus' imminent death and burial and resurrection. It's detailed. In many ways, these verses right here, almost like the table of contents for what comes next. I mean, Jesus goes right through it, tells them exactly what's going to happen to him, including, the way he will be put to death by crucifixion. It's all right there. Again, the third pronouncement, if you're keeping up in the Gospel of Matthew. And so what follows, these last couple of sections are literally what Matthew chooses to put at the end of that introduction before we start the story of the Passion, right? So let's take a look at those closely. First off, here comes Mrs. Zebedee, James and John's mama. She comes up with the request. I think this is just the cutest thing. It's a really interesting story. It causes, a firestorm with the disciples. I mean, you just want to find a way to get your two sons killed. This would be the way to do it. So James and John's mama, she comes up to Jesus, kind of pulls him off to the side like mamas will do. And she just kind of says, listen, when you get your kingdom, if you don't mind, we know you got the seat of honor, but you're going to have, there are going to be two seats on either side of you. And those will be the, seats of second honor. And if you don't mind, could my boys sit there on either side of you in the kingdom of heaven? All right, let's talk about that right there. First off, do I need to remind you, the world is not your mama. The world is not your mama. Many of us had good mamas, and a good mama typically will give you birth through great pain and suffering on her part, and then she will, from that point on, find great joy in picking up your shorts. Thank you, Mom. I mean, that's just what mamas do. Your mama, often seems to be in the world simply, to serve you and hand you things. And God bless all the good mamas out there who love their kids, even their grown kids. But can I just say, the world is not your mama. That's not how the world works. It's certainly not how the kingdom of heaven works. You understand? But Miss Zebedee gets carried away because she loves her boys so much, and she doesn't quite understand that just because, she thinks they're so cute, doesn't necessarily qualify them for seats of honor in the kingdom of heaven. This is just a mama doing what mamas do. But like I said, first off, I want to remind you that the world is not your mama. Nobody else in the whole world is here to serve you and hand you things. Nobody else will find joy in picking up your shorts, And certainly the kingdom of heaven is not structured in such a way, where your mama can put in a good word for you, like she goes down to school and talks to the principal, and gets you an AP English. I mean, that's not how any of this works. Jesus is quite direct, though, in answering her. And I think it's interesting. Jesus doesn't really answer her. After the main question is posed by, mama, Jesus kind of turns and says to the boys, and mama kind of disappears, out the back door, which is probably appropriate here. So somehow Jesus just turns and talks to James and John. So it's almost like they put her up to it, or at any rate, he refuses to talk to mama when you got two, fully grown men sitting here. Not going to talk to your mama like you're, boys. And so Jesus turns to the boys, to James and John, and just simply says, you really don't know what you're asking. Notice he doesn't say it's impossible for you to sit there. He just kind of says, there's a price involved with this, and I don't think you understand the price of what you're asking for. Are you willing to drink the cup that I will drink? I think it's fair to assume that they understand that this is the cup of martyrdom, the cup of death. I think it's probably clear. I mean, Jesus calls it the cup of suffering. I think that they understand that Jesus is asking them if they're willing to die. Again, Jesus has just said that he will die. I think it's plain that they understand that. I also think it's plain that they sort of overestimate, their present condition of Christ-likeness. I think we all do that. So when Jesus says, do you think that you can drink the cup that I will drink from the cup of suffering? They're like, well, yeah, yes, bring it on. Bring it on. We will drink what you drink. Yeah, no. It's interesting. Jesus goes on to say, well, as a matter of fact, you will. Like I said, I think they overestimate the degree to which they are ready at this point, but they are going to suffer. They're going to go through quite a lot, and at some point they will be actually ready to make good on the promise they make on this day. That they will die for him. They really will. But then Jesus goes on to say, but those seats. Those seats are reserved for the ones they're reserved for, and it's not really my place to assign them now because your mama came in. In other words, man, if you aim to sit with Christ in the kingdom of heaven, then understand not even your mama is going to be able to rescue you from the cup of suffering that it will cost. You understand? Jesus himself then has to, interrupt the argument that erupts between the disciples because they are furious with James and John. It's not so much of what they did is so wrong. It's just that they thought of it first. What do you mean? You get your mama in here. Did y'all get the good seats? They all want the good seats. That's the whole point. And that's exactly why Jesus says, listen, that the world works in such a way where, the ones who are important lord it over the ones that are beneath them. But Jesus says, not so with you. That's not how it is with you. And he says once more, whoever wants to be a leader has got to be the servant. Whoever wants to be first is going to have to be last. Even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others. Do you see that? None of us is here to be served. Like I said, the world is not your mama. And you should not be sitting around waiting for people to do things for you and hand things to you. We are all, if you're following Jesus, you are here to serve, not to be served. You are here not to try to be first in line, but go ahead and make yourself the last. So when Jesus says, well, those seats are reserved for the ones they're reserved for, it's like, well, who do you think's going to sit in those seats? Like a famous preacher, Billy Graham, Mother Teresa, I don't know. Like Paul, my hunch is, I don't know, but we'll get there one day. And let's mean you look up and notice who's in the two seats of second honor there. I have a feeling it's going to be nobody. You know what I mean? I don't mean like nobody. I just mean it's going to be nobody special. Somebody you never heard of. The people who wind up in those seats, I'd say, are going to be just the last. The servants, somebody you never heard of. Somebody that's only famous in heaven, because in this world they made themselves the servant. They put themselves last. And for that reason, they never got famous, not even for 15 minutes. That's just my hunch. But the point is, honor in heaven, comes at a cost. And the cost is, serving and sacrificing and suffering here on earth. That's what Jesus says. Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. You'll notice that then Matthew tags on this it's very similar to the two blind men, the story of the healing of those men in chapter 9. It's very similar, but it's not the same story. And the differences are kind of interesting. It's the same in that the blind men say, Jesus, son of David. They refer to him in a very messianic way, a Jewish title, son of David, have mercy on us. Again, this is the little story Matthew chooses to sort of introduce the entire passion narrative, the death of Jesus. And I just think it's beautiful that right before Jesus gets to Jerusalem and lays his life down, you have this story of sinners crying out, have mercy on us. And then in the previous story, Jesus heals, but it tells them not to tell anybody, right? He heals them in response to their great faith. In this story, he heals them in response to his great compassion. He has compassion upon them. And then he says what? They followed him. They followed him. In the previous story, remember, Jesus said, don't tell anybody. But in this story, you have this cry, Son of David, have mercy upon us. His great compassion, he's moved and he heals them, and then they follow him right into Jerusalem, where he will lay down his life. Interesting. I love you guys. I love you. Thanks for being in the Word with me today. Chapter 21, verses 1 to 17. The triumphant entry is tomorrow. So read ahead, be in the Word, and have a good Wednesday. It's going to be a rainy day, I think, but it's going to be a good day. Make sure that you praise him and love him and serve him in all the ways you can today. Enjoy this day that God has given you. I'll see you in the morning, Lord willing.